Welcome to Think Like a Dog podcast, where we explore dog behavior and psychology-based training to help your dog achieve their full potential. We're going to talk about place, and that goes right into with the crate. That's why we're doing them in this order. But the place is, can you explain what the place is? So those that are not familiar with what place means.
Yeah. So place is a command that we give our dogs to go somewhere. Most of the time it's like a bed or some sort of, more psychological boundary than the crate. Go somewhere, stay somewhere, and just chill out there. So it's, definitely, it practices impulse control. It practices human giving direction, dog taking direction, boundaries, things like that. But more importantly, it offers our dog yet another place to turn their brain off and to cope with stress. That is the most important part of place. I think that's the thing that out of everything that I focus on the most when it comes to like actually interacting with my dog is place work and the walk. Because with the crate, it's just about routine. With place, you do have to teach it and practice it and be intentional in what you're doing, because you can't just close the door and walk away and know that they're going to stay there. They're not going to with place the first couple times you do it.
Yeah, and the place board that we typically use as a place is usually raised off of the floor a little bit, and it's it's a place where they know this is where I'm going to relax. I'm going to turn my brain off. And when our dogs first was introduced to the place, it was the first session with Bubbles, our pitty, and Millie put a lead on him and guided him to place. And within 1 hour, that dog already knew what place was.
Well,
because he was associating that with it.
Okay, listen, Bubbles was going to sleep anywhere. I just gave him a nicer place to sleep.
He does sleep a lot. So there's that.
It's more impressive for a dog that doesn't like to sleep as much as Bubbles, but Bubbles made me look very good.
But it's something that your dogs do when you start to introduce that to them and associate it with, you stay here and you come off of this place when I tell you to, and they start realizing like, all right, I'm just sitting here. I know what to do. I have direction. I don't think about anything else other than staying right here. They're eventually going to thank you for it. And it's important to understand that place is different than their comfy beds, right? Is that?
It can be. I mean, with Kemper, he has place is his dog bed, but he has also been practicing place since he was 10 weeks old. So I care a lot more about the mindset than I do about the location. But when I first got him, place was a raised bed. The reason that I always start off with the raised bed is because it's a clear and like more defined boundary for the dog. It's a lot easier for them to understand it. They can't be like half on and half off of it like you can with a dog bed or a blanket or something like that. So it's a lot clearer to the dog. And as they grow older, it can be different things. You can even, point at a park bench and have it be place, or, a sewer drain, whatever you want it to be. But it's about the mindset that accompanies the word place that really matters. And I think that is the biggest difference between the way that we train place and the way that most people at least come to me. If they have heard of place, they've heard of it as like a thing that you tell your dog to do so you can open your door and invite guests in and they don't jump on the guests. It's almost like this obedience command. We teach it as a mindset, and that is the most important part of place. This is where you can go, and this is where you turn your brain off. This is also where you learn how to do nothing, which is the most valuable skill a dog can learn, is how to do nothing at all, especially because with Brick, he is 3 months old and he wants to do everything all at the same time, which is impossible because his legs are like 2 inches long. But it's such an important skill, not only for your puppies to learn, but for your dogs with anxiety of how to do nothing and stop with your brain kind of turning over and over and over. Your dogs with a lot of fear, your dogs with a lot of hyperactivity, your dogs that, want to jump on everybody and be involved in everything. It's a skill to practice of you go here, you stay here, you do nothing here. So the biggest difference between crate and place for me is I will absolutely, and we talked about this, I'll feed my dogs their meals in crates. But I don't do any sort of excitement on place, especially when I'm first teaching it. So we can talk about too, it'll be, a good thing to talk about of what are the rules I might have with my dog the first year that I teach place. And then what does it look like 3 years from now? What can place look like then?
And now place is more of a boundary and a coping mechanism. And that's one of the first things you talked about with us. When our dogs first started learning place, we went through a transition period because I was really focused on when making their lay down play areas really comfortable. So I would buy them these like really fluffy beds and really nice beds, and I would put them in their crates. And I would expect them to just go there and chill out. Like, I'm making it really nice for you. And then they would always find a way to take the beds out and just rip them to pieces. And it got to a point where I would even email Millie, and it was at the beginning of our training sessions. I'm like, please help. What do I do? They won't stop eating their beds. And she's like, just get them place boards instead of beds. That might work.
Are toys, apparently, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and also a lot of the longer haired or like large breed dogs actually really like the place boards. I've had a couple clients with longer haired dogs, and we're in Georgia. So what they'll do is they'll put the place board on top of an air vent in their house, and the dog loves it because it's their like nice airflow underneath.
Louis would love that. He
Yeah.
always finds the air vents to lay on top of. So Louis our little guy.
I mean, it's super helpful for dogs that like to chew their bed. And it's also super helpful for dogs that maybe are a little unclear on the boundary. And it's extremely helpful for dogs that are really, really hot throughout the day in the summers. It really helps.
Yeah. And when you first start introducing the place, we did it with the lead, and we kept the lead on while we were practicing place. And I remember you told us like, set a time during the day that you guys are really intentional with place. So whether that be 15 minutes, 10 minutes, however long you can have that day, just do it whenever you can and be intentional with it.
Yep.
One of the things that really stuck out to us in our first sessions is we really just practiced a lot of place work in our sessions. We went from just starting off with the lead and a place board and one dog, and we would say, place, and you would tell us about body language and eye contact. Can you go more into that?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first rule of place is that, and this is probably important to note before we get into all of that, but first rule of place is nothing happens to my dog on place, good or bad. I don't pet my dog on place. I don't talk to my dog on place. I don't feed my dog on place. There's no treats. Like you said, if I say the word place in order to teach place, I use a lead to enforce place. So, place means go here because every single time I'm leading you there until I no longer have to, right? I take nothing happens to my dog on place so seriously that if I were to walk into somebody's home and their dog, ran to place because they understood that as a safe place and I needed to put a lead on them, I would invite them off of place to put that lead on, actually. So Jabroni, my Mastiff, who was very human reactive, understood place as that. He got cancer, and I, at the same time, got COVID. So Luke, who was just my boyfriend at the time, was in charge of taking my very human reactive 100-pound Mastiff to the vet multiple times that week. So the third time, Luke pulls out the leash. Jabroni knew where he was going, and he was like, I'm not interested. No, thank you. So he went to place. Luke went and tried to still put the leash on him, and Jabroni nailed him. Like, he had to go and get admitted to the hospital, and it was bad. He still scars on his arm, and for some reason still married me. Crazy. But that was him Jabroni using place as a healthier coping mechanism of saying, I don't want to go. Now, obviously he had to go to the vet. So I came downstairs. Still don't know how Luke did not get COVID then, but he got bit by a dog. So that was enough. But I came downstairs. I called Jabroni to me. He came to me. I applied the leash and we were solid. But it's a way for a dog to say, I would like to opt out. That is why I take it so seriously of it's not about, I want my dog to love this space. I want my dog to know that when they hit this place board or bed or whatever, they can expect nothing. They can expect me not to pet them. They can expect a stranger not to pet them. Nothing. So kind of going back to the thing about body language that you said, on the dog's end, I don't care if my dog is standing, seated, laying down on place, because the important thing is that I am associating this space with calm. Eventually, if I do that enough, my dog is going to automatically go to place and lay down, right? It's just because they know that there's nothing to expect here. I get to go here and chill out. So why would I keep standing, right? It's the most comfortable thing for them to do is lay down. Now, when it comes to what you said of like our body language of how to get them on place and how to get them off of place and eye contact and all of that, the lead is the most important part. Your dog is not going to stay on place without being, without somebody enforcing that the first couple times, or at least the first little while that you're practicing it. So it is important to be intentional. And that's why I tell people, you can't just say place if your dog is not reliable with place or doesn't understand place at first and walk away. I mean, they're not going to stay on place. And so then you now have a dog who understands place as something to go to the spot, but then leave whenever you want. And that's the second rule of place is if I tell you to go there, you have to stay there until I release you. If your dog goes to place on their own, they can absolutely come and go as they please. That's our end goal, is that our dog uses place for when they're overwhelmed and leaves when they want, or when they're not so overwhelmed. But to get them on, we use physical pressure. We need to have a whole episode on pressure and release. I come up with a new episode every single time. But to get your dog to go on place, you take the leash, and as they're walking on place, you are creating pressure on the leash, saying the word place, because they have no idea what that means at that moment. And then you are acting like you have done this for 20 years. So either the second that they walk on place, you are maybe kind of circling the place board while making sure that your leash has no pressure on it, whatever it is. If your dog comes off of place before you invite them, you need to square up with them. So kind of face them, move into them. And if that spatial pressure that you're giving is not enough, your leash pressure is there to back up your spatial pressure. Now, let's say you're at a point, which we got to very quickly in our first session, that you can put your dog on place and walk away. Maybe not walk into a different room, but at least, walk 10, 15, 20 feet away. I get the question all the time, oh, I need to ignore my dog, or should I look at them, or what do I need to do, right? I tell people, just don't be weird about it, right? Like, don't stare your dog down, and also don't make this big show of ignoring your dog, because for dogs, eye contact is invitation or confrontation. So for a dog that I don't know, that might be human reactive, and I'm walking into their house for the first time, I'm not looking your dog in the eyes, right? I need my hands for my job, okay? But for Kemper, if I stare at him long enough when he's on place, he's coming to me, because it's weird that I'm staring at him, right?
Yeah.
I must need something. So the most important thing is that you act like it's a very normal thing that you're doing. You just say place, enforce place, and then don't live there, move around, or even if you need to stand next to them, make sure you're not facing them. Take that pressure off by facing away from them, or even just kind of sidestepping away from them. So then that way, place doesn't always mean go here and then I'm going to stand right here and over you and stare at you, right? Because that's weird. That's not relax. I couldn't relax if anybody did that to me.
Yeah, and we forget to put us in our dog's position and kind of think about it that way. If I'm sitting in this chair and if my mom is just sitting there looking at me, I'm going to be like, do you need,
what is going on? Is there something you'd like to tell me?
But if she's walking around and being normal, it's all right, I'd rather sit than stand, like you talked about. And when dogs start to associate that with, this is where I relax, this is where nobody messes with me, there's no excitement, it's just where I relax, then it becomes a normal thing. And what you talked about also is when we put them on place, we lead them there with the lead, walk into them a little bit so they go and get there. You don't care about whether they're sitting or standing or just laying down. And then once you are confident that they are there, you just kind of walk around and just walk and not, just kind of leave them be. That's what you told us to do. Just walk around. Then when you want them to come off, that's when you you wait for eye contact and then you say come. So that was our drill.
How I release is really important too. And like I said, a lot of everything that we're talking about right now is for a dog who's brand new to place, right?
Yeah.
So I don't release my dog. I walk up to my dog and I will pick their leash up. And if they think that me picking their leash up means to come off of place, then that's where we work, because it doesn't. So I'll walk up there and I'll pick their leash up. And if they try to come off, I'll put them back on, drop the leash. And then I get to a point where I can pick that leash up and they don't try to come off of place. But I always walk up to my dog to release them from place, because if I were, if most owners tried to release their dog from place 10, 15, across the room, right? That dog is going to be bolting off of place to you, probably, because they don't want to be there in the first place. It's a boundary. They're confused. It's impulse control. And that's what it is at first. I want to make sure that I am teaching my dog to take that mindset of neutrality and of calm, to take that off of place with them. That's the end goal, is that this is a mindset that they've gotten so good at that they can move throughout their world with that mindset, not just be on place. Now, that's not how I teach puppies. I can kind of go over, I think that would be helpful, or, a young dog, like anything younger than 4 months. I'm not going to do what I did with you guys the first session, because I would be able to walk away for 5 seconds with Brick. He has no impulse control whatsoever, right? What I'm doing right now is tethering him. So I have him tethered to his crate, which he is now beginning to be able to pull. But his bed is right there. His place bed is right there. And it's all about creating this default association with, like, this is where I rest in the house. And I think that is the most important way to practice place. If all you do are your 20 minutes of drills on place and you never grow from there, your dog's not going to understand that truly as a space where they turn their brains off. Because you're going to go there and you're going to do a bunch of random stuff and they're going to be alert watching you. I want my dog to be able, that most of the time they go there and I'm seated on the couch, in front of them. So right now, Brick is not out in my house. He is tethered, either with place kind of being an option for him. I'm not saying the word place, but it's where he rests, because at almost 3 years old for Kemper, there is I can count on one hand the times where Kemper has ever rested anywhere in my house besides place and besides crate. But that's not because I'm always telling him. That's because that's where he's just always been. That's the association of, if I'm out, this is where I chill out.
Yeah. And you say, don't give them treats when they go to place.
Mm-hmm.
Don't create that, association. A lot of people believe in positive reinforcement, everything. And you say it, you're not going to have treats all the time.
Yeah. Well, and also it misses the point of the actual reward, which is nothing happens to my dog on place. That's the reward of place. One, food excites the mind. I can't expect a dog to be calm when I'm also feeding it. And we've talked about that in previous episodes of, I will use food, but in situations where my intention is to build drive, not to create calm. I will not use food if the end goal is calm, right? But the more important point is that the affection that you're giving, the reward for place, isn't because you told them good boy or good girl or you gave them a treat. It's because you offered them a safe space. You offered them a place to not be involved. And when you have a more insecure dog, which those are the ones that I see a lot for reactivity, your dog is looking for a way to create space, a way to opt out, because it's not fun for your dog to bite. They would much rather have another option that is more reliable. So if you have kids and you don't have your dog in a crate, or you don't have place work down, you are creating this perfect storm unless you are constantly there separating your dog and watching your dog's every single kind of emotion of, okay, well, my dog is forced to back my kid off because my dog doesn't know that they can back off. They don't have a space to go that nobody messes with them. That is the reward of place, is that they get to turn their brain off and they get to opt out.
And a lot of people asked on our Instagram question box, what do you do when your dog does stay in place, but they whine or cry when they're in place?
Let them figure it out. I mean, to me, that's most of the time a dog who is not practicing that on a day-to-day. That's not a lifestyle that we're practicing. It's more of an obedience command that we're practicing. Or it's a dog who's very, very new to place. So that's where I would suggest tether training. So, or not, I guess, because they're staying on place, but they're whining and barking. Just make it where if you're in the living room, that's where they are. They're on place. It's important too, because I just had a session on this the other day. Make sure place is not right next to you. And when you're like on the couch and your dog's like right here, that's not the point. The point is that place is somewhere your dog can rest at a distance from you. Because if you're here and place is here, what happens when you get up to go get a drink of water? Your dog's going to inevitably come with you. So make sure, I like to have it where place is kind of across the room, maybe under the TV, so I can kind of see if they get up and try to leave. I know what they're doing. I know if they're chewing on something they shouldn't, whatever. But you got to let them just work it out. You ignore it. If they come off of place, you can correct it and put them back on. But other than that, let it ride.
Yeah. And one person also said that is place, how long should they be in place, and how to not associate it with like a timeout?
Well, it's not a timeout. So
Yeah.
that's why they're not going to associate it with a timeout, because it's not a timeout. How long they should be. Okay. This is the way that I normally put it. Most people who ask that question, I will respond with, well, what does your dog do all day anyway? And most people will respond with, they sleep. They either sleep on the couch or they sleep over here or whatever. It's not like they're bouncing off the walls, because most people, if their dogs are bouncing off the walls, they're not keeping their dog or they're exercising their dog or whatever it is, right? That's not the problem that we have. Most dogs are able to rest in their home. All you're doing by telling them place is deciding where they rest. That's it. They're going to rest anyway. They're going to sleep anyway. The place is just go and rest here, right? So my response to that would be, how much sleep does your dog get a day, right? How much relaxing does your dog do every day? However much that is, that's how much place should be, right? Why does it matter where they rest? And if we have an opportunity to control a resource and really practice giving direction to our dog on top of, if we're only practicing place for 20 minutes, that's not a lot of time for your dog to learn that that's a safe space. Yeah. That's not a lot of options to happen, that your dog is realizing, oh my God, the vacuum is going, but I'm here and I'm safe and I'm still alive and it has nothing to do with me, right? Or the person came in and nobody's petting me or talking to me and I can just observe for a second. 20 minutes a day doesn't get that. It's a lifestyle. If my dog is out of the crate, he is most of the time right now in place, not because he's in trouble, not because I'm asking him to, but because that's where he chooses to be. That's just where he rests.
Yeah, when we first started working with you, I had a huge problem with my doodle, Max. He would continually bark at me when I sat down to eat because he wanted my food. It was really bad. He's already a very active guy, and he wants to do everything at one time. He wants toys, he wants attention, he wants to run, he wants to jump on you. He's just like really hyperactive, and it wasn't helping that we were just like fueling that. But when I started to prepare food, that's when he started the barking. As soon as I sat down, there was no way. So the first things we started to work on with place, as we did practice place throughout the day, I did swap out all their beds for a place board. And then when it was time to eat, that's when I really put him in there. And if he started to bark or whatever, like I would just get up, walk into him, and then he would stop, and then I would just walk away, sit down and eat my food. And eventually he doesn't care about food anymore. It got to the point where I take him out to eat with me to places. Yeah. Like we go on lunch dates.
Yeah, that's true. I forgot.
He stays right there. There's other people eating around him. I'm eating. And it's great because now he knows he's not involved. He doesn't have to be involved in that, what I'm doing.
Yeah. So two things with that, the barking and whining on place. But, when your dog is barking and whining on place, I am a big fan of making sure that my dog's body and mind are synced up. So if my dog is barking and whining on place, there's a good chance that my dog understands that they have to stay here, but they don't associate it with calm, right? So I look at that as, okay, you are whining and barking, then just attempt to come out, right? I almost want to push my dog to make that mistake so I can then step in. But the dog who's staying there and just screaming, right? That's a dog who most of the time has been taught that as an obedience command, not as a place to turn their brain off. So if you do have that dog, I would do things like, the dog is barking and whining, I would do things like, stand up and sit back down. Something that might make that dog kind of come off of place. So then that way you can step in and give some sort of interruption. Second thing is, what you just said. I, for some reason, never put two and two together that one of the issues that we had with Max was that he would bark at you while you were eating, but also the reason that you originally hired me was because Bubbles went after Max over food, but it wasn't, right?
Yeah.
It was Max's intensity level over food. So it was originally Max.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying is Bubbles is perfect.
Yeah, it really.
I'm just kidding.
But Bubbles, and we were even my mom and I we were talking about this because Bubbles is the one that, if we didn't really think about it, we would always point the finger to him because he's gotten into some fights with our other dogs. And he was the reason why we started training in the first place, that interaction that he had with Max where they fought and it wasn't pretty. But all of these reasons it was the other dog's
Intensity
behavior
level.
and intensity level. And Max was just very intense about food and about wanting things off of your hand, and to the point where he would jump on me. He would bite my hand to grab the object. Very intense in every way. And now we've gotten to the point where we talk about it all the time. He's an example dog at day camp.
Yeah, Bubbles. Max is the most neutral dog in the world at day camp. And Bubbles thrives with neutrality. At day camp, it is difficult to get Bubbles off of place, right? Like really, we have not seen any amount of reactivity. We still muzzle him because he struggles sometimes with chiropractor. He used to struggle a lot with nail trims, not at all anymore. And we want to make sure that that's a tool that is not a big deal for him if we do want to use it at home or in new environments, but we've not seen any issues with him at work, but that's because we keep everything very neutral. There's never a time where he feels like he needs to control, but place is a great way to practice that neutrality. We talked about that with the crate. That's kind of your foundation of being able to teach your dog how to turn their brain off because they have no other option. Place is the dog has an option to leave, but they're going to choose. You're going to teach them how to choose neutrality.
Yeah, and when dogs get that option of neutrality versus chaos, they're going to choose neutrality when you teach them that that's an option. A lot of people might want to give their dogs a more comfortable place board.
And I put a blanket on it.
Yeah, and I wanted to mention too, Canine Ballistics have really good place boards. They have these beds that have cushion in the middle, but they're in a metal, bed place, and you can either remove the bed, the little feet, or put them back on.
Oh, cool.
So it's very functionable. Plus, it still gives your dog a comfortable place to sleep. So all of our dogs, because they kept tearing up their beds, and I thought that I just had to keep buying new beds. I eventually got them the place
Paranda
boards.
beds. Yeah, that's the super. They're like made of aluminum or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, if your dog is like Kemper, you have to have a blanket on place. Because I messed up and now he won't rest without some sort of blanket unless he's at day camp. He actually will chill out on place without a blanket. I think it's my fault. I'm just not realizing that. But yeah, it doesn't have to be uncomfortable. I also like the raised beds because you can take them outside and you don't they can be in the wet grass if you need them to be.
Yeah.
And kind of, they make ones that you can fold up. I bring those to group classes, just so they're portable and you don't have to get your house dirty and track things back in or wash the bed, whatever it is. Like I said, it's also a clearer, more defined boundary for the dog. But what matters more, you can start teaching it with a blanket if you want to. It's harder for the dog, but what matters more is what's associated with it. You said I wanted to give my dogs like a really nice comfy place to rest, but they don't rest as good as they do on what seems to us a less comfy thing than they did on the beds, because the raised beds represent calm to them. It represents turning your brain off. It represents doing nothing. The other beds, that was just a giant stuffed toy to them.
Yeah.
But you could have done it with that if you had taught, you know what I mean? Like if you had worked with them with that. It's just that there were times that it was in their crate and they were able to chew it up.
Yeah. And with everything that we talked about so far, crate training, place work, this all translates into the dog's behavior and their ability to process information, for them to be more comfortable when they're alone, to lessen separation anxiety. If every dog owner would just learn place and crate, there would probably be such a
I wouldn't
lower
have a job.
percentage.
If people knew crate, place, and the leash walk, and then general boundaries,
Yeah.
I would not have a job. I wouldn't be able to pay my mortgage.
I would feel like you would just be stuck with a really bad cases of like,
I mean, if everybody knew that, I wouldn't
yeah.
have it. I would be teaching obedience. I'd be teaching like, fun tricks.
Competition.
Yeah.
or, yeah, you would
Yeah.
have to like to change your whole
Exactly. Yeah.
training methods.
Maybe we shouldn't release this episode today.
But it really does solve so many issues, and people don't translate it into going back to that. And it all goes back to like boundaries and setting the tone in your relationship with your dog. We receive so many messages to our rescue about dogs just needing to be rehomed because of separation anxiety, dogs needing to be rehomed because of resource guarding. Those are the two main reasons. There is no, I really haven't received any other reason. I mean, I haven't received many emails about dogs needing medical care and the owners can't afford it. I mean, that has been minimal and we've helped them with that. Most of the time, it's stories about dogs that have separation anxiety and the owners feel like they can't do anything about it.
I get a lot of messages about human and dog reactivity,
Yeah.
but it's a dog who they send me the picture and the dog's on the couch and the dog's like snuggled up. And, to me, that's then what boundaries are we giving if that's the picture that you're showing me? But, with Rusty, you have that video. So Rusty came to us because originally he was dog reactive, but like it's like a loose dog reactive. It was more just kind of on defense mode with him. But Rusty got out of the crate, or we didn't lock it. Your mom, somebody didn't. I'm not blaming anybody. Your mom crate trained Poochie and Louie, so I'm forever thankful to her. But it wasn't locked correctly, or somebody else's wasn't locked correctly, and so Rusty, who we so far have only put around other dogs while he's muzzled, was out unsupervised and with no muzzle with Max. Thank God it was Max.
For an hour.
But what did he do?
Nothing. He went to place.
Exactly.
He went.
Yeah.
We have this on video, and if you're watching this on YouTube, I'll put the video on the screen. Max and Rusty were in the same room, and Max, thankfully, he practiced a lot of good socializing skills, so he knows how to be he has good social skills.
It was really like at the very beginning of that video, Max was sort of like, I don't think this is supposed to be happening.
Yeah,
he did a lot of like kind of calming signs to Rusty of like, listen, we're all cool here. I'm not going to play with you. Right. But Max originally was the dog who you were like, he is wild. He's out of control. He can't not play. Right. Yes. But Max actually calmed dog reactive Rusty down enough to where Rusty was like, cool, great. I'm going to go to place. Like that shows everything that you did this past year.
Yeah. They both were in place resting for about an hour before we saw that they were actually loose. And when we walked in the room, I had to tell my mom, she was by herself. So I told her, when you open that door, just walk right through them and get them to the crate. Whatever you do not engage with Target. Do not engage.
Don't create
Target.
any intensity.
No,
because that's what Max was trying to do. Is like, nobody's intense here, dude. We're good.
And when they're not perfect dogs, So when they see us walking towards like their room, and it just associates like excitement. They see us, they get excited. So when they saw my mom coming, Max and Rusty started to get excited, and that made me so nervous. Like,
were you watching on the video?
I was sweating. I was so nervous. I was out of town, and my mom was right there. We were on the phone. I'm like, just open the door as quickly as possible, walk through them, open the crate up, get them in.
Yeah.
She called me back. She's like, perfect, went perfect.
Yeah.
Nobody got excited. Max was obviously very excited when he saw me, but because I walked through them and I pretended like they weren't there and just opened the crate up and they knew what to do, that was it.
And that's because you had been practicing crate in place and these socialization skills for both of them for the past year. Well, Rusty since October.
Yeah, since October. But really, I've been really intentional with Rusty because he came with so much baggage that, as soon as he came to us, he started to do training sessions, day trains with Easton.
Which then place is great for, so many issues with Rusty and the dog reactivity issues that we had. Place was a somewhere he could go where we made sure other dogs weren't messing with him. We would back other dogs off. For dogs that have separation anxiety, it's a place where they can go and turn their brain off and they're no longer responsible for their human. For dogs that are worried about people at the door, well, I don't use place as a preventative for rushing a door, right? Because most of the time it's not going to work, right?
Yeah.
What I'll do is a contrast of feeling exercise in that, where if I have a dog who's human reactive, I will put them on a leash, on a muzzle. And if they're not muzzle trained, I'll put them in the crate. And I will bring them with me to the door, making sure that they are by my side, and then immediately put them on place after. So then that way they understand that none of this is about them, right? So, place is a way for your dog to understand that there's an option for them to not have to be involved. The hardest type of dog to teach place to is a dog who's actually really enjoying being involved. That's what I'm dealing with Brick. He's a very bold puppy, not scared of literally anything, which is a problem, because he's not looking for direction. So place to him is like, I'm okay being involved. Like, it's not stressing me out at all to be involved. But that's where it comes in as a boundary, right? And as somebody, or as as practicing, I make the rules, you follow the rules, because inevitably throughout his life, he's a dog. He's going to find something that he is not going to understand. He's not going to know what to do about. And I want to make sure that he understands I will know, and he needs to look to me. So it's important no matter what. Even if you have a dog who gets stressed out about decision making, even if you have a dog who does not get stressed out about decision making, but it's not fun for your dog to be reactive at the door. It's not fun for your dog to be pacing throughout your house. If you have a dog who's overactive, like Max, who literally did not know how to chill, that is an important skill. Like, there is no dog in the world that place work and crate work and the leash walk is not an essential skill for them to live a happy, healthy life. It just doesn't exist.
Now, with dogs that have a lot of separation anxiety, whatever it may be, and you don't know how to start with, crate training, place work, whatever it may be, but I really advise you to just at least work with a trainer that knows these skills at least once, so they can work with you individually and show you how to do this in the best way that works for you and how to implement this in your lifestyle. Because it will only, if you get the right trainer, it will probably only take one session for you to gain the knowledge that you need to follow through with it. And also, if your dog has a lot of issues or something has happened, like in our case, Bubbles got in a fight with Max. He's a pit bull. Max is a doodle. So who looks guilty? The pit bull.
And he was new.
We just adopted him. But it's kind of like I see dog behavior kind of like when you have a medical condition and you self-diagnose yourself. You go on Google and you self-diagnose and you try to figure out like what's wrong with you. And you might get like a completely different issue than what you actually have.
Absolutely.
But if you go to a professional, they will tell you exactly what's wrong. And that's what has worked with us, is that when we worked with you, you really read into the situation and you say, this is the issue. This is how you need to work on this. This is how you should introduce these things that we're talking about, the lead, the crate. This is how your body language should be. And that has helped tremendously, because we could have easily thought about Bubbles as an aggressive, reactive dog, and he's not that.
Right. I mean, and that's so important for even me. I can't, You're too close to it. It's your dog's. It's, especially when you just adopt a new dog, of course the blame's going to go there, right? But it is really helpful to have somebody who has worked with the issues before, comfortable with the issues, to kind of look at the whole thing from a very holistic perspective. And that's important that we didn't just go in. I mean, the first day, I didn't just go in and be like, let's put food on the ground and put all the dogs together and correct them. It's, why is this happening first? And the reason it was happening is because Max didn't know how to chill. Max didn't have like really a good, Max was screaming in the crate at that time, right? Like, that's when he was doing a lot of the barking in the crate. He didn't associate the crate with calm. He wasn't practicing calm on place. So Max was living his life at this very intense level. And Bubbles, who came into this new home, was like, okay, well, there's, I'm in a crate every once in a while, but other than that, there's not a lot of rules here, right? So I guess I'm the one that makes the rules, and how I make the rules as a dog is through my teeth, right? Through correcting. Yes. Yes, Bubbles gave a insane and way overcorrected Max, but Max was also at an intensity level that no like healthy correction would have worked for him at that moment. So we changed the why, and we practice crate training a little bit of a different way. We practice place work so that the calm mindset can come not just in a physical boundary, but when they are also out in the world or having the world kind of pass them by. But all of that mattered to seeing what you came to me with food aggression, right? You said it was food aggression. And I said, I don't think that this is food aggression. I think that this is a dog who's trying to control a situation that is uncontrolled, right? So we worked at it from every single angle. And all of those involved it. I mean, crate and place and the leash walk and socialization and how you interacted with them on a day-to-day basis.
Yes. And that's what really changed our relationship and helped our dogs improve, because it wouldn't have helped them if I taught them to sit. It wouldn't have helped them if I taught them to roll over, and all of these little things, the training packages put together that guarantee your dog's going to be perfect by the end of it.
Blasted them on an e-collar when they were, super, when they were going for each other. To me, that's fighting fire with fire. We changed the why.
Yes. And someone even said on one of our questions how they have an e-collar on their dog while they're on place. But we touched that a little bit too, is don't mess with your dog while they're on place, right?
So I will use the e-collar as a way to I will layer that on top of when I say the word place, and then I enforce with the leash. So it's not the thing that's making my dog go to the place, but it's almost just another layer of information. But the only time that I do not layer the e-collar off of on top of information that I'm giving my dog is when I'm releasing my dog from place. So when I'm walking up to them, getting eye contact, saying let's go, there's no e-collar there. Mostly because nothing happens to my dog on place, and I also don't want it to be a situation where I accidentally turn the dial up and then now I, say let's go, layer that on top of that command, and all of a sudden my dog now associates place with this crazy feeling, which that's not. You can still undo that, but nothing happens to the dog on place, good or bad. I mean, especially bad, but nothing at all. Now, okay, with kids and dogs, if your toddler is learning how to crawl, you make sure that the toddler, I like to put cones like within 3 feet outside of the place. So it's not ever a situation where the dog feels like, okay, my space is being, my boundary is being crossed here. What I was told I could just relax in, now there's a toddler crawling towards me. But let's say your dog and your child do get along every once in a while. That's where I will have a raised bed and then just a regular bed. And I will treat the raised bed as something that nothing happens to my dog here. And the regular bed, sometimes I can snuggle with my dog here. Sometimes my kid can get on the ground and snuggle with my dog here. We brought Kemper to a career fair 1.5 years ago, and I had 2 beds, flat bed, raised bed. If Kemper was on the flat bed, I would allow people to come up to him. If he put himself on the raised bed, no. There was no interactions, right? So it was a way for him to be like comfortable either way because it was pavement. But it also allowed him to let me know what he needed from me, right? Did I need to advocate and tell people, hey, he's a little overwhelmed right now? Or was he cool with everything?
Yeah, that's a really good way to advocate for your dog, is putting them on place too.
Yeah.
Like we did that with Rusty at the adoption event at the baseball game that we went to. Mm-hmm. And when he started to feel a little anxious,
we just pop him on place, which he's associated since October with nobody messes with me here.
And you would tell people walking up to him, say, oh, just a second, he's taking a little break. And people would appreciate that, like speak up for your dog. Don't be afraid to say, he's a little bit tired. Let him have his minute. We can talk, we can chat. He doesn't need to be involved in what we're talking about. Right.
And especially if, I know I said at the very beginning, when I'm first starting a dog on place, I'm really structured with it. So they're not allowed to come off until I release them. I don't do squeaky toys on place, no tug toys on place, nothing exciting. I will give them I'm okay with like a Nylabone, something that they can kind of chew on and work on, but nothing like edible, nothing exciting on place. There is truly nothing happening to my dog on place. But as they start to really understand that as a mindset, Kemper comes off of place every once in a while, even though I've told him place. That's fine with me because he associates that with a state of mind that is neutral, and I can if it's a time where I really need him to stay there, he will stay there. I'll just kind of repeat it again. He'll go back. But the important part is that I know, given a situation where he might feel like, so overwhelmed that he has the option of potentially biting to back somebody off, which he's never done. But if he's ever in that situation, I know he'll never choose that, because he can back off and go to place. He can go to his crate. He can come by my side. That is the important part of place for me. But you only get that through making it a mindset and a lifestyle.
Mm-hmm. And some people might ask, can I make the couch the place?
Mm-hmm. Or can I make my guest room the dog's crate? To me, okay, unless your guest room is like a den for an animal, right? Like a little kind of cave cubby hole, then no, right? Also, if your guest room is a cave, I would like to see that. But no, the couch is an elevated space. The couch is not its own kind of place. I don't want an ottoman to be place. I don't want any sort of elevated anything higher than your place board, which is kind of 2 inches off the ground. The ottoman and the couch allows your dog to be at the same kind of spatial plane as your guest, as you, as the people that are in that house responsible for the decisions. I want my dog to know I can go over here and relax. I don't have to be in the thick of it.
Yes, and that's exactly what happened to us, because our dogs realized place is a calm place to be. Mm-hmm. And the couch that we have in their room, they don't choose that couch, because that's where I sit down. I cuddle with them a little bit in that couch. I give them all the attention, but when they go to place board, they don't get messed with. Right. So in their room, even while they're unattended and I'm not there, they're not jumping in that couch. They like to go to their place boards.
Because dogs like neutrality.
They like neutrality. So on this episode, we talked all about place. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to email us at info@thinklikeadog.com. And do you have anything else to add on?
Nope, I think that's it.
All right. And if you do enjoy this podcast, don't forget to leave us a review. We really appreciate it. And we always look through those reviews and post on our social media as a thank you. But don't forget,
practice makes progress.
Thank you. Until next time.
Make sure to follow us on Instagram at Think Like a Dog Podcast and follow at Mirror Image Canine for training tips. If you have any questions, please reach out to us via email at info@thinklikeadogpodcast.com.